Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am an adrenal fatigue recovery expert, and today I want to talk to you about thyroid and adrenal glands and the relationship, otherwise known as the Hatfields and the McCoys. I think it's really important because there's a lot of overlap with people that have adrenal and thyroid problems, whether it's not having any energy, feeling cold all the time, not being able to lose weight, having brain fog, having some gastrointestinal problems, not sleeping, potentially losing your hair, dryness of skin, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, a lot of different things that are related to each other. Waking up from sleeping a long time and feeling like you didn't sleep at all, and just crashing throughout the day. So there's a lot of overlap, and I think it's really important that those that have an adrenal problem that know it be assessed from a thyroid point of view, or vice versa. Those that have a thyroid problem and know it be assessed from an adrenal point of view. Or there's always the likelihood that you don't know if you have a thyroid or an adrenal problem. So let's talk a little bit firstly about thyroid metabolism, and I think it's really important to know. Let's first talk about the brain. In the brain, we have the hypothalamus and the pituitary. Let's just put a signal, an H and a P, and that will come in important afterwards. But the hypothalamus is the central control station. So it senses changes in the body, whether it's cold or it's hot, it's stressed or it's not. It basically senses changes. So let's talk about it from a thyroid point of view. Let's say that it's cold, you go to a cold restaurant, it's cold in your house, or it's cold climate, and your body's cold, and it needs to have the messages sent for the gland, the thyroid gland, to kick it up a notch and warm up the entire body, much like a janitor would warm up fire up the cylinders and get the school ready for the remaining part of the day. What happens is the hypothalamus senses the changes in the body, and it sends TRH, thyroid releasing hormone, to the pituitary, and the pituitary will then send TSH to the thyroid. And when the thyroid gets the message that it needs to kick it up a notch, 93% of the hormone is inactive, T4, and 7% of the hormone is active, T3. And I use this example, and you may have heard me say this before, this is kind of like having a coffee bean and a ground up coffee. 7% of the thyroid hormone is ground up already, and it's ready to be used. That's T3. It's 93% of the hormone is T4. It's in the coffee bean form, and it needs to be converted to T3, and that's what takes place in the liver. And so I'm not going to get into some of the conversion problems that happen if we have liver problems, whether it be a liver toxicity or a fungus infection or a parasite or a mold or a virus or whatever it may be for the liver to be overwhelmed, or even blood sugar issues will cause the liver to be distressed. But let's talk about the adrenal glands. So let's say we have a stressful event. Over the weekend, my son broke his hand, and that was really, really stressful for me because he was in a lot of pain. There wasn't much I could do about it except get him to the walk-in clinic, and so right away I could sense the anxiety and the raciness and the stress that I felt for him being in a lot of pain. What would happen there is the hypothalamus, the same thing that signaled the thyroid, would signal now my adrenal glands, except it's going to release cortical releasing hormone. And that cortical releasing hormone now is going to go to the pituitary, and the pituitary is going to release ACTH. And that's adrenocortical stimulating hormone. And what's going to happen is my adrenals are going to release cortisol. It's going to release adrenaline. It's going to release noradrenaline. It will probably release a little aldosterone. There's other hormones that the adrenal glands release, but suffice to say the main hormone is cortisol. And what that will do is that will create an increase of sugar into my blood supply, give me more energy, increase my heart rate, increase my breathing, increase my respiratory, increase my blood pressure, and dilate my vessels, and that will also cause me to have sort of that fight or flight response. Now let's imagine that these two cycles, so let's write down the HPT and the HPA. So the HPA is the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenals. Anytime we're stressed, but not just stressed physically or mentally, stressed environmentally, stressed internally with an infection, stressed emotionally, there's all those stressors. Think of it like a meat grinder, and it doesn't discern whether it's pork or beef or chicken. It just grinds stress. Stress is physical, it's mental, it's emotional, it's environmental. It's all of those things that's causing the hypothalamus, pituitary, and the adrenal axis. Then think about your thyroid, and it's sort of the janitor of the body. It has to prepare the cells for the remaining part of the day. It needs to produce energy. It needs to burn fuel. It needs to, every cell in the body has a thyroid receptor. And so the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the thyroid axis is always being stimulated as well. Eventually what happens is the axis becomes broken. And so the hypothalamus works on a negative feedback system. So that means if there's a lot of cortisol, then the hypothalamus says, hey, you know what, there's already a lot of cortisol in the body. We don't need to send the pituitary to tell the adrenals to work. Or if there's a lot of TSH in the body, then we don't need to send the pituitary to tell the thyroid to increase its levels because it's already elevated. And what happens with every tissue in the body, when there's an elevation of hormones, then the glands become desensitized, or there's down regulation. And what that means is, imagine having an annoying boss or a spouse that's always yelling at you. Eventually you tune it out. And that's called resistance, or that's called binder site resistance. And so what happens is, even though there's a high elevation of that circulating hormone, whether it's thyroid stimulating hormone or adrenal hormones, ultimately the signals being sent from the hypothalamus and the pituitary stop working properly. And not only that, there's no longer access into the cells. And so this is where we start to see fatigue, brain fog, focus, concentration, not having energy, crashing in the middle of the day. And so it's really, really important, number one, to assess what's going on. So this means getting a proper thyroid workup, getting TSH not only done, but total T4, T4, total T3, T3, reverse T3, thyroid free thyroxine index, and most importantly, thyroid peroxidase antibodies and thyroid binding globulin antibodies, because 80% of people that have thyroid problems, it's their immune system that's acting up and it's causing an attack of your thyroid, and we'll be able to determine that from those antibody tests. As far as the salivary test goes, or the adrenal test, we recommend having a adrenal saliva index, where you're taking your saliva sample in the morning, you're taking it at noon, you're taking it between 4 and 5, and then you're taking it between 10 to 12 at night. And this will give us a good idea as how well your circadian rhythms are working, how your DHEA is working, how your additional steroid cycle is working, like testosterone and progesterone and also estrogen and estradiol. It will give us a good idea on what's going on. From there, we can start to assess where the breakdown is occurring and then go about it in a way that addresses the cause. But today I just wanted to explain to you the relationship between the thyroid and the adrenals, and it basically comes down to the signaling between the hypothalamus, pituitary, and the thyroid, or the hypothalamus, pituitary, and the adrenals, and how that breaks down. So hopefully you found this edition of your Adrenal Fix informative. If you liked what you heard, please give me a thumbs up, a share, or a like, and be sure to check out my website at Adrenal Fatigue Society, and I look forward to helping you with your thyroid nightmare and your adrenal nightmare. Thank you so much.